Welcome to the podcast editing and support show. My name is Dave. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. We're going to start the episode right now. Happy to have you here. Let's do this. Yes, let's do this. We are here back again, and you're here. Thanks for being here. We're talking today about what is podcast editing and why you should never neglect editing your podcast. Interesting. I hear sometimes people saying, well, Dave, I'm just going to hit record. I'm just going to record a live episode and post it. I'm done. I'm not going to edit anything. I'm not going to fix any of my flubs and my mistakes. I'm not going to fix my ums and my yahs and my yays and my stumbles. I'm just going to let it be real. Let it be real, man. Okay, well, I understand that will save you some time, but at the same time, I wonder if you're thinking of like a listener instead of thinking like a podcaster or a content creator. When we think through the ears of a listener, maybe some of that live feel, that unedited romp through podcast land, although it might be easy for you to not edit, there might be a benefit to your listener to edit. So, for example, if you are the type of podcaster that likes to go on tangents or can't finish a complete thought, or halfway through saying something, you start talking about something completely different and you never finish your thoughts. You never come back to completing a complete sentence because something else catches your attention. As a podcast listener, this can be very frustrating. Another thing that I hear in podcasting when listening to an audio-only podcast, which is the majority of podcast consumption is audio only, by the way. When a video podcast, a live podcast, translates into audio format, we get a lot of, so the mic I'm showing you on camera is this new mic, and it's a great mic. What do you think? Oh, hey, Steve, I like your mic. I like the picture behind you on the wall. Oh, yeah, isn't that nice? I got that from my wife. Did you see what my shirt says? Isn't that great? Yeah. As a listener, all of that is completely frustrating because you're no longer talking to me, the listener. Podcasting from its inception was designed to be inclusive, to include the listener, to include your audience. Anytime that you make visual references in an audio format, it can be very frustrating. And you lose your audience. You lose me because I don't know the microphone, I don't know the picture behind you, and I can't read your shirt because you can say on a video podcast, I just got this new shirt and it says how to podcast. Isn't it great? And if you want to see my shirt, go to my Instagram and you'll see how to podcast, my new shirt. That's better than look at my new shirt. What do you think? Ooh, I like your shirt. Next topic. Do you see what I mean? So some of that video, non-edited podcasting would greatly be improved by removing some of that visual elements, non-descriptive elements from the audio version of your podcast. And a podcast editor can do that for you. So if you want to release a live video recording of your podcast, excellent. There's ways to do that in video format where all of the nuances of everything you're saying is included because we can watch and your viewers can interact with your video podcast. Awesome. But when it comes to the audio version, instead of just taking the content and making it audio, there's editing that could spruce it up and make it better listening experience for your audience. And that's where an audio podcast editor comes in. We can make you sound amazing to your audio audience. Editing your podcast will help to make your podcast more interesting, more entertaining to the viewers and the listeners. Audio editing, whether you're an audio podcaster or a video podcaster, audio editing is vital. And to our video podcasters out there, it seems that you spend more time on cameras, lights, and background than we do on the audio experience of what people hear when they listen to our show. You can have the best background and lighting possible, but when your content is hard to listen to, again, because of tangents, because of distractedness. Sometimes I listen to podcasts and they sound like distracted squirrels. Your podcast needs editing. You need to clean that up and take some of the boring stuff, the non-value added items, out, because it's just painful as a viewer or a listener to go through your podcast and you're all over the place. Editing is your friend. Why should we never neglect podcast editing? If you were to ask a bunch of podcasters why they started podcasting, most would probably say that an idea sprung out of passion for a certain subject or interest. And passion is essential. However, as you go on throughout your podcast journey, you will begin to realize that interest is not enough to sustain you and to sustain your audience. You must be able to finesse your podcast with professional quality production. To newbies in podcasting industry, the thought of paying professional podcast editing rates can be overwhelming, extremely daunting, and scary. However, remember to never let your fear push you to neglect the proper editing process. So here are a few reasons why quality podcast editing is a must. Listeners notice even the minute errors. You might think that you can make your podcast show successful even with minor errors in every episode. And I hear this all the time in podcasting where a podcast host will say, made a mistake. I'm just going to leave it in there, keeping it real. That is like chalk on a chalkboard, nails on a chalkboard. That's terrible. Because you just admitted that you, A, are too lazy, or B, that your listeners don't matter in the moment because you're keeping it real, man, and just leaving in all of your errors. We get to see and experience all of your mess ups, and you don't even have the time to value us as a listener to remove them when it's a simple cut. So please stop saying that, because as a host of a podcast, having an editor in your corner to help you sound great, you don't need to give excuses for your bad edits that you're just going to, quote, leave in there for some reason that adds value to someone somehow. Podcasting as a purely audio experience, there is no other element that your listeners are focusing on except the sound of your show, of your voice, and the things you're doing. They should therefore be able to focus on the voices of the hosts and the guests. And if there's these annoying sounds or tangents, they will surely notice these errors. Repeatedly spoken expressions and filler words, for example, might seem minor to you, but these errors, they compound over time, after episode after episode after episode. And what you don't realize is you're creating a world where people can anticipate your next error because you're so repetitive and you do them over and over and over again. And your catchphrases and the things that you default to when you're thinking of the next thing to say become evident and predictable. Those things need to be removed. They need to be addressed for the sake of your audience. They might seem minor to you, but these errors will distract and disrupt the flow of your content. So by producing a high quality podcast means attracting more listeners, maybe even a sponsor or advertisers who won't actually pay you money to be a sponsor for your show. If you ignore quality, in the long run, your listeners will grow unsatisfied and potentially ditch your show altogether. They'll just get to the point of frustration and go, you know what? This person's not improving. They're not addressing the things that I find annoying, and I'm done. If we aim for perfection early on by using a podcast editor, by honing our podcast editing skills, you will never, ever go wrong. It's better to edit out the unnecessary words, the sentences, and the tangents when you're completely off topic and you tell them, oh, wow, we really went down a rabbit hole here. Delete that. Get it out of there. If you don't do it, you're going to regret it in the end. Time spent editing is time well spent. Did you hear that? Time spent editing is time well spent. The road to success is always rocky and steep. That's why there's not a lot of people on that road. It's not an overnight thing. So, of course, you should invest time, effort, and resources in your podcast editing or an editor. You might think it's better to release more content than allot time to editing because you think, the more, the better. And in the podcasting game, however, quality always supersedes quantity. Always. You can choose a range of podcast editing rates to fit your budget. And I'm going to be giving you information through this podcast about how you can find the right editor for you. We're also going to look at digital audio workstations, also known as a DAW, D-A-W, tools that you can use, whether free or paid, that can give you the advantage of understanding how to make yourself better and how to take your skill set of editing your own show and maybe turn it into a business where you can help others with all the skills and talents you're building as a podcaster, editing your own stuff, that now you can take your skill set and help someone else, like what I'm doing at truemediasolutions.ca. The whole idea for this podcast is to, A, help you find a podcast editor who can do all the podcast work for you. Again, remember, you're going to ask up front, is this an audio podcast or a video podcast? I want to help you find that a great editor where you can trust them, build a relationship, and they got your back. You do the recording, you put it in a Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever, and they take care of everything else and make you look and sound amazing. That's what I want to help you do. I want to help you find that person. But at the same time, maybe you want to become an editor and you want to take your skill set and turn it into cash, where you have the heart, the love for podcasting, for podcasters. And as a podcaster, you become an editor. What better person to understand how to get your podcast on Apple, how to do what an RSS feed is, how to make show art, how to use Canva, how to make a video, a short video clip out of a podcast. Who better to set up your podcast on all the players than a podcast host who now does editing? You have a decided advantage over somebody who watched a video on YouTube and is now a self-proclaimed podcast editor who knows nothing about the inner workings of being a podcaster. So my suggestion to you, if you're a podcast host and you're looking for an editor, ask your future potential podcast editor the name of their show. And if they look at you funny and go, I don't have a podcast, I'm an editor, pause and go, am I okay with that answer? Because I'm going to tell you, probably better to hire somebody who knows what they're doing, who is actively podcasting, my hands raised, who knows all the inner workings and everything that happens behind the scenes. That is a better resource for you in the long term, because you won't have to explain to them how to do their job. Hire an editor who cares about you as a host. By giving that little time at the beginning to get to know them before you sign a document, agree to a payment plan, and give them your baby, your podcast, make sure you have that conversation up front. If you're looking for an editor, shameless plug, I would love to help you. I now have multiple clients I'm working with, different stages, different requests, different things they all need, but I'd love to be there for you. You can find me at the Podcast Editing and Support Show on our website, in the show notes, and also at truemediasolutions.ca. I would love to help you and work with you on your podcast. Come back for more episodes here on the Podcast Editing and Support Show. We're here to help you edit your podcast, and we're here to help you support you as a podcaster. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one. Woo-hoo. Take care. Hey, thanks for being here for the Podcast Editing and Support Show. Again, if you're looking for support for your podcast editing, head over to truemediasolutions.ca. Would love to talk to you there. Great episodes coming up here on the Podcast Editing and Support Show. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.